am pleased to introduce last year's Trustees Award recipients for a few remarks. Dr. David Rookup, if you would please come forward.
Thank you. I know this is a disappointment because you thought you got tickets to the Charlie Sheen show. I also know you're ready to go home. I'll have you out here by 10 o'clock, I promise. I have the best job in the world, and I love Columbia College. Anytime anyone, anywhere asks me about my job, I have two quick responses. I have the best job in the world, and I love Columbia College. Tonight's a real special opportunity because I can tell 500 people I have the best job in the world, and I love Columbia College. I started teaching in 1978. I was 14 years old at the time. Walking into the classroom today is as much fun as it was in 1978. Not too many people can say that about their jobs. I began teaching in 78, came here in 96, and I'd like to thank Michael Polly Batterson, and Polly's wonderful husband, Jack, for recommending me in 1996, and I hope that they've never regretted that recommendation. I truly appreciate the steadfast support of Dr. Terry Smith, who's in Chicago, I think, and Dr. Gerald Bruder over the years, although that support certainly makes me question their judgment. Since 1978, I've obviously had the opportunity to work for a number of administrators, and I can tell you without a doubt that Dr. Smith and Dr. Bruder are the best on the planet, and I'd like to give them a round of applause. We're going to do this a few more times, so hang on. Columbia College is indeed fortunate to have a supportive and dedicated Board of Trustees, and to have the excellent leadership of Daisy Grossnick as chair, and I'd like you to give them a round of applause. I also want to thank my colleagues. Working with such marvelous teachers as those we have here forces all of us to stay at the top of our game, because if we don't, we get left behind. And I've taught in a number of places, and I can tell you that's not the case everywhere. It's nice to be challenged to be a good teacher. Members of the Columbia College faculty are the most creative, innovative, thoughtful, and honestly fun teachers on the planet. I'm truly fortunate to work with you. I'd like for everybody to give them a hand. I really appreciate these close friendships that I've forged over the years. I'm fortunate to have had good friendships throughout my life, and friendships I've had here have made my life much richer, I can tell you. I'm also fortunate to work with such wonderful students, and I certainly think you all deserve a round of applause. And finally, this is where it gets personal. I want to thank my family. They're all here tonight. On May 11th, I will be married for 25 years to my best friend, Lynette. I know that the term soulmate is often abused these days, but in our case, I can say with certainty that the term is appropriate. I can honestly say that without her, I would not be teaching today, because I would never finish my dissertation without her reminding me and nagging me. Our children, Jessica, Dylan, and Adam, have taught me how wrong I was during my bachelor years when I proclaimed I never wanted children. My life has been enriched because of you. applause for my family. You're doing good. I want to talk about teaching and teachers and learning for a few minutes. And some of this is going to be very personal. Teaching is a passion for me. Very few things about in life that we find that are passionate, that we're passionate about. Teaching is a passion. So what I'd like to do for a few minutes is talk about teachers, not all of whom are classroom teachers. People we meet every day, sometimes are our greatest teachers. Here are a few of the teachers who've helped shape me for better or for worse. I'm really glad Dr. West is not here. Our parents are or should be our greatest teachers, most important teachers, although I don't think we understand that until later in life sometimes. I was fortunate to have very supportive parents, neither of whom had the opportunity to go to college, but both of whom were determined to send me if I wanted to go. My father, Charles Roebuck, was severely handicapped from the age of 8 by osteomyelitis, a recurring infection of the bones. There was no cure for it in those days. He suffered through surgery more than 30 times in his life. He had bones removed, bones scraped, bones replaced, and his right hip was out of socket from the time he was 8 years old till he died at age 74. He still worked 50 to 60 hours a week in a milk bottling plant. Retired at age 65 only because his health would no longer allow him to work. When he died, 3 weeks before he died, he wasn't complaining about the cancer. He was complaining about not being able to go back to work. His first job in the plant was custodian. When he retired, he was plant superintendent. While I was in college, my father raised hogs to make enough money to send me to school without bankrupting the family bank account. My dad was also the local election officer. The nights he allowed me to stay up and watch votes being counted were my first political experiences. It was fun. It was before electronic ballots, and it was all done by hand, and it was interesting. My mother, Julia Roebuck, gave up her job when I was born and stayed home until I was 5 years old when I went to school. My mother worked in a garment plant, made Wrangler jeans. She was hired as a receptionist, then moved to payroll. During her last 15 years with the company, she was an engineering specialist. She didn't have a college degree. So she trained engineers who graduated from college who made a lot more money than she did because she didn't have the college degree. When the company closed, my mother became city clerk in our little town in Mississippi, where she planned the city's annual budget, managed it as if it was her own, drew the city council districts every 10 years, managed payroll and things like that. As you can tell, I'm very proud of my parents, what they accomplished through hard work and tenacity. I know that I have the best job in the world at a place that I love because of the sacrifices of my parents. In addition to our parents, other members of our family also are teachers, obviously. As mentioned a minute ago, Lynette and our children taught me the true meaning of unconditional love. My uncles who served in World War II, who came home quietly to be farmers, truck drivers, factory workers, taught me true patriotism and humility. They were members of Tom Brokaw's Greatest Generation. My aunts, all of whom called me Charles David because single Southern names run unseemly, taught me to treat others with respect and honesty. I won't share all the things I learned from my cousins because we were a rowdy bunch. All of us thankfully survived and most of us avoided arrest. I often think of the classroom teachers who've had the greatest influence on my life, and I hope you'll allow me to, well, you don't have a choice, you're sitting there. I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about some of those teachers because we don't normally think about the people who have such an impact on our lives. When I was in 3rd grade, I had Mrs. Gillespie. Sorry, it's always Mrs. and Miss back then. At the end of every day, Miss Gillespie read Little House on the Prairie. Just for a few minutes, I remember the vivid imagery of the Wilder family and struggles, the love they shared. Mr. Gillespie was Mrs. Gillespie's husband. Actually, he was also our principal, and he taught 7th grade. It's funny the things that you carry with you throughout your life. I remember he could recite long passages from Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, as well as poems by Wordsworth and others. I was impressed that someone could be so passionate about poetry that he actually wanted to memorize the poems themselves. Until I had Mr. Gillespie's English class, I thought limericks were the only true poetry. In 8th grade, I had Mr. Sutter. One day we were reading some long forgotten story, have no idea what it was, and we got to the word lacerate. Once again, I'm remembering this, how many years later? We got to the word lacerate. When we got to that word, Mrs. Sutter stopped and shivered and said, "That word gives me chills." And then she explained why. That's the first time I realized that words could have value. It's the first time that I realized that words could elicit emotion. 3 years ago, I was in the chapel, and I gave silent thanks to Mrs. Sutter because I was listening to Dr. Pam McClure read her own poetry that was so powerful and so filled with emotion. And I thanked Miss Sutter because Miss Sutter helped me appreciate Pam McClure. Also, while I was in junior high, our school was integrated. I grew up in Mississippi. One African-American teacher, you got to listen to the name. Her name is Mrs. Early Bell. If that's not a wonderful school teacher's name, I don't know what it is. Mrs. Early Bell was chosen to move to my school as were several African-American students. I'm humbled by the courage it must have taken for those students to leave their school, which was only 3 blocks away, quite honestly, and come to my school that would still be 95% white that year. In hindsight, I know that I learned a great deal from Mrs. Bell, from Leonard Betts and his brother Herbert Betts, from James Herman Edwards and his brother James Edwards Jr., from Leon Shack and Joe Nathan Sims, and others whose names I've long forgotten. In high school, I had Mr. Mickey Murphy for algebra. Algebra was not my best subject. Mr. Murphy convinced me to go to junior college rather than going to work as most of my friends were. Were it not for Mickey Murphy, I would be doing something quite different this evening. I certainly would not be here on this stage. Also in high school, my favorites, Mrs. Loretta Box and Miss Jane Long, my junior and senior English teachers. All of those students thought they were at least 100 years old. Ms. Box showed me how spry she was one day when she thought I wasn't paying attention. She twisted my ear so hard I thought it was going to separate from my skull, and then she threatened to talk to my daddy. That's all it took. Mrs. Box and Miss Long taught me not to dangle my participles or split my infinitives, but they forced me to read Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, Taming of the Shrew, and then they taught me to enjoy them. I know that Danny Campbell was surprised that we read Shakespeare in Mississippi. Once again, if not for Mrs. Box and Miss Long, I would not be on this stage tonight. In junior college, I had a teacher, don't remember his name, there's a reason for that. He didn't really teach a class, but I had him for American National Government. Many students know that that's still, I've taught that class 200 times and it's still my favorite class to teach. From him, I learned how not to teach a class. So dreadful teachers also have an impact on our lives. I'm almost there. I've only got 42 more names. We're almost there. In 1974, I was an undergraduate and I still wasn't certain about a major. I'd had several majors at that time. And I was fortunate to enroll in Dr. Thomas Handy's comparative politics class. The second week, we began discussing the British legislative system, and I know I'm a geek. I was hooked for life when we started talking about the British legislature. Last day of the semester, at the end of the semester, I walked up to Dr. Handy after class and I said, I want to major in political science. He said, well, of course you do. I think I've been talking quite a bit in class. Because of Dr. Handy and his excellent teaching, I found an academic field to love in which I still love 37 years later. Love political science. Dr. Janos Radvanya had been Hungarian ambassador to the United States. He defected in the 1960s, earned his PhD in history from Stanford. I took every undergraduate course he offered, primarily Russian and Asian history, almost persuaded by him to pursue graduate studies in history. He showed me a world I did not know. I exchanged emails with Dr. Radvanya a few months ago. At 90, he still teaches at Mississippi State University. I hope to do the same at Columbia College unless they decide otherwise. Dr. Erwin Neumeyer, Graduate School of Political Philosophy professor. I took every one of his graduate courses, made an A in most. I can truly say that he made me see the world in a different way. Professors who can do that are special. I'll be in debt until I die. Years ago, I closed my office door, almost missed my next class, because I was crying when I found out that he had passed away. It was untimely. Dr. John Winkle, last one on my list. John Winkle, my graduate professor in course of Jewish behavior. All my students hopefully know that I love learning about everything related to American politics, but my passion, hopefully, is courts of public law. Dr. Winkle has been twice named Ole Miss Professor of the Year. I'm very good fortune having him as teacher, mentor, and dissertation director. There are others I could mention. There's so many others I could mention, but I know you're hungry and quite honestly my stomach's So what do I want to take away from this? All of us should constantly be aware of our interactions with others, because every contact, even those seemingly trivial contacts, often influence lives. Those of us who do stand before students every day often influence far beyond the present. Many of the people who've influenced me over the years have no idea they did so, although I've tried to contact as many of them as I could to tell them. When I think about all the teachers who've influenced my life, I'm truly humbled to be referred to as a teacher myself. The possibility that this kid from small town Verona, Mississippi could have an impact on my students is almost overwhelming. To have been honored last year with a trustee award for teaching excellence when I worked with so many excellent teachers is almost inconceivable. To have landed at Columbia College where teaching really does matter proves that miracles do in fact happen. I have the best job on the planet, and I love Columbia.